What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. So it looks like there's been an offer made to Canelo by Eddie Hearn that would give him a 2-fight deal, upward to $85 million guaranteed. The first fight would take place in May against the current WBA light heavyweight champion, undefeated Dmitry Bivol, and the second fight would be against Triple G, Gennady Golovkin, and that would be their third fight. I would say rubber match, but for it to be a rubber match, it would have to be one guy winning one, the other guy winning the other, and then you settle it in the third fight. In this case, the first fight between Triple G and Canelo was a draw. Second one, Canelo was given the decision win, and so this would be the trilogy fight, but not a rubber match, kind of like Wilder versus Fury or Fury versus Wilder. But, you know, it's funny. You ask 5 different people, who do you want to see Canelo fight? You might get 4 or 5 different answers. You might get Jermall Charlo. You might get Artur Beterbiev, which might be the most dangerous fight for Canelo. You might get David Benavidez at 168. You might get Dmitry Bivol. You might even get Joe Smith Jr. I don't think you would get too much Junior Makabu at cruiserweight, even though that was tossed out there, obviously. And you might get Gennady Golovkin, Triple G. You might even get Demetrius Andrade. There are just a ton of different options that Canelo has, and I would not have expected Dmitry Bivol to be the way that he goes. Even though, you know, Canelo's got a good working relationship with Eddie Hearn, Dmitry Bivol does hold the belt at 175. He's not as dangerous a puncher as Artur Beterbiev, but you could argue he's a better boxer than Artur Beterbiev, and it's arguable who's beaten the better talent. I mean, Artur Beterbiev is now beaten Gvozdyk, you know, earning a share of the title against him. He beat Marcus Brown most recently, whereas Dmitry Bivol has now beaten Jean-Pascal Isaac Chilemba, Joe Smith Jr. So they both have good wins on their resume, but Artur Beterbiev has knocked out or stopped every one of his opponents. Dmitry Bivol, on the other hand, has won his last 6 wins via unanimous decision. No split decision, so he's not losing on anybody's scorecard, but he's not getting them out of there in the way that Artur Beterbiev is. But I would have thought that Canelo would have even, I mean, recently the reports were that he was leaning, Eddie Reynoso said that he really likes the attraction of the fight between Canelo and Jermall Charlo. And again, nothing is official right now. This is just what appears to be happening. Sources close are saying that this 2-fight deal is imminent against, again, Dmitry Bivol at 175, and then the trilogy fight against Golovkin. Golovkin would have to come up to 168. But I had just done a video very, very pleased at the idea of Canelo fighting Jermall Charlo. I mean, some of us who have been paying attention to Canelo's career for like a decade or so were wanting to see Canelo versus Jermall Charlo as far back as like when they were both at 154. I mean, they were both killing it at 154 at around the same time before Canelo and then Jermall Charlo went up to 160, and we still haven't gotten it. So, yeah, I was really hoping that that fight was about to be made. But, you know, if Eddie Hearn is putting up this money, $80+ million guaranteed to fight, you know, Dmitry Bivol, then Triple G, then it's almost like, who cares that nobody knows who Dmitry Bivol? I mean, nobody outside of hardcore boxing fans really knows too much about Dmitry Bivol. Whereas, you know, even casual fans know about Triple G because of how great those first 2 fights between Triple G and Canelo were. So I get the attraction on that one. That one feels like a mega fight, even if, you know, I personally think that the window of opportunity for Golovkin to secure a win versus Canelo, I feel like that ship has sailed. I don't love how Golovkin has looked against Steve Rolls, against Sergey Derevianchenko in a fight that I thought Triple G lost. Like, to my eyes, that was the first instance of Triple G losing a fight. I thought that Triple G beat Canelo in their first fight. I thought he should have been awarded the decision. I thought that the second fight was a pick'em. Totally a toss-up. That one could have really gone either way. I think Canelo shocked us all in the way that he fought Golovkin in that rematch. I don't think we were expecting to see Canelo on his front foot taking the fight to Triple G. But now Triple G's a couple years removed from that. He's pushing 40, if not 40 already. And again, in that fight against Derevianchenko, I thought Golovkin lost a close decision, but he was awarded the win. And then most recently, he stopped Cesar Romero, and he didn't look spectacular doing it. He didn't look like the Triple G of old, who was just kind of fee-fi-fo-fumming the middleweight division. I did want to see him fight Sergio Martinez or Dmitry Pirog, one of those middleweights at the time. But he was just running over the competition. Willie Monroe Jr., Curtis Stevens, David Lemieux, Marco Antonio Rubio. He was just killing the game and building his reputation by knocking out like a consecutive string of opponents. I feel like that ship has sailed, and I feel like if Canelo were to fight Golovkin today, it would probably result in Canelo stopping Triple G, regardless of what we saw in those first 24 rounds between the two. I just feel like they're at very different stages in their career trajectory at this point. But it would still be a mega fight because of the name recognition of Triple G and what even casual fans remember seeing in those first two fights. But the Dmitry Bivol one, that one kind of surprises me. And again, I think that if Canelo is offered just a ton of money, then it's like, I don't care who you put in front of me, right? Even if it's not as scintillating and sexy a name as, you know, a Jermall Charlo, David Benavidez, Triple G. This is a dangerous opponent, somebody who I think can potentially beat Canelo. Canelo has earned a share of the title, by the way, at light heavyweight before. You know, he had beaten Sergey Kovalev, and Kovalev, even though he was post-prime crusher Kovalev, he was holding a belt after his fight with, Anthony Yard and Elieter Alvarez in their rematch. Elieter Alvarez stopped Kovalev the first time they fought, but Kovalev won the decision in the rematch. So Canelo has won a belt in this division, but if Dmitry Bivol is still in his prime, which is kind of an open question. Yes, he's still undefeated, but he seems like his last few fights have been pretty lackluster. I mean, they've really been snoozers where he is winning just about all of the rounds, the vast majority of the rounds, but he's not really putting his foot on the gas or doing anything to really push the issue or to finish the fight via KO, TKO. He's been winning, again, 6 straight unanimous decision wins, but he is a 6-footer. He is a sound boxer. He's very good defensively. It's a very interesting matchup issue. He doesn't move like Erislandy Lara did back in the day when Canelo kind of struggled with him. And I don't see him bringing the fight to Canelo, where he's just imposing his will in the way that I would imagine a Joe Smith Jr. or Artur Beterbiev would try to against Canelo, or David Benavidez would try to against Canelo. I don't see Dmitry Bivol fighting that type of a fight. So this could be very interesting. Again, I wish I saw something more convincing from Bivol in his last few fights. Again, the guy already has wins over Joe Smith Jr. and Jean Pascal and hasn't lost a fight, but he hasn't been blowing us away in his last few fights. But this would still be a very interesting matchup. Like, would you lean Canelo via stoppage over Bivol? Would you lean Canelo via unanimous decision or split decision win over Bivol? Somebody who, again, hasn't lost on a scorecard in his entire career. Like the first half of his career, he's only 19-0, right? Dmitry Bivol's only 19-0. The first half of his career, or 2/3 of his career, he was getting way more KOs and TKOs. But even in his decision wins, he hasn't had one split decision win yet, or majority win. It's all been unanimous. So the idea of Canelo, who, I wouldn't call him a slow starter, but we have seen Canelo give up a few rounds, lose a few rounds here and there. And we've seen how Dmitry Bivol kind of controls the fight to where by the midpoint of the fight, he's pretty much got things under control. It's going to be very interesting to see how Canelo, once again, giving up a few inches in height like he normally is, especially in recent fights as Canelo's been going up the division ladder. Yeah, I'm very interested to see Canelo Alvarez versus Dmitry Bivol. But this isn't where I was expecting Canelo to go because it feels like a, high risk, low reward type of fight. But again, if they're opening up the bag and giving him $80 million for these couple of fights, then again, who the hell cares who you put him up against? So, dangerous proposition. upon first glance, I don't even know which way you would almost have to lean Canelo just because he's done what he's done, but I'm going to have to take a closer look at this matchup. You know, Dimitri Bivol has a 72-inch reach compared to Canelo's 70.5-inch reach. So it's not a great reach advantage for Dimitri Bivol, but you got to see Dimitri Bivol's fights to see how he kind of has fights under control, and then measure that up against how Canelo is able to take those first few rounds to where he's able to more or less impose his will by the middle rounds and really just put a beating on his opposition. Again, Canelo's only fought once in this division. Dimitri Bivol isn't a huge light heavyweight, but again, Canelo's only like 5'7.5", 5'8" maybe. So this is a demonstratively bigger fighter. And I'm thinking of who you could really compare Dimitri Bivol to in terms of who Canelo's already fought. It wouldn't be like Daniel Jacobs. It wouldn't be, Callum Smith or even Billy Joe Saunders. Billy Joe Saunders is an, awkward southpaw. Caleb Plant is a very technical fighter, but Dimitri Bivol throws more, combinations. He does let his hands go a little bit more than Caleb Plant tends to, and he's an orthodox fighter. Throws from very intelligent angles. He's a sweet science guy. Don't get me wrong. Dimitri Bivol certainly is. That's why he's won the fights that he's won in the fashion that he's won them. Again, I'm just kind of surprised that this is where Canelo's going. I would almost have expected more so, if not Jermall Charlo, if not right into Triple G3, who, by the way, still has to handle business against Ryota Murata, the current WBA champion. Triple G currently holds the IBF belt, but I would have almost expected Canelo to either go cruiserweight to win a belt in yet another division, because that's a huge stamp to your legacy, or even Artur Beterbiev, because he's kind of seen as the best and most dangerous fighter at light heavyweight. And by the way, if they end up making Beterbiev against Joe Smith Jr., I love that fight too, because that is basically a come forward fighter against another come forward fighter. Something's got to give there, right? But Beterbiev is now in his mid-30s, so I almost feel like Canelo would have seen that and seen, you know what? I'd be curious to see if he could go a hard 12. And we just, again, Beterbiev, he hasn't shown great signs of slowing down, but he is, again, 35, 36 years old, something like that, and Canelo is in his absolute prime. So I would almost have expected Canelo to say, yeah, give me that mid-30s guy, as opposed to the 31-year-old, potentially still in his absolute prime, Dimitri Bivol. Risky business, man. And I love the way that Canelo is willing to take on great fight after great fight, whereas, you see some of these other guys at 168, at 160, kind of standing around waiting and hoping that Canelo comes around to them, holding their belt, and not really taking any risk. If Jermall Charlo doesn't, in fact, get this Canelo fight, I'd love to see him fight Demetrius Andrade. He should have been fought Demetrius Andrade. Jaime Munguia and Triple G should have fought each other. Triple G should have fought another champion. Like, there's no reason for Triple G to be dodging, Demetrius Andrade, unless he's truly just trying to cash out with one more mega payday. And in that case, well, if that's the case, why fight Ryota Murata in a unification fight instead of Demetrius Andrade? I mean, Demetrius Andrade's on DAZN, like Triple G. I just don't see any excuse for that one not to happen. To me, that's a travesty. And it sucks that Demetrius Andrade is not getting any of the fights that matter at this point, because I don't think it's for a lack of Andrade wanting those fights. It truly appears that these other guys don't want the fight with Andrade. I don't know if it's just high risk, low reward type of thing, but yeah, it's just very frustrating to witness and observe. But yeah, I love this Canelo Alvarez versus Dimitri Bivol fight. Not as much as I wanted to see Canelo Alvarez versus Jermall Charlo, but I'll take it. I think that this is a very interesting matchup. Let me know what you think in the comments. Again, this isn't yet official. It just appears to be trending in that direction. But yeah, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog. Thanks for tuning in.